What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Alex Wilson. And while we, like the rest of the NFL world, wait for Aaron Rodgers to make his decision, the New York Giants are starting to have a plan B formulate. With the New York Giants waiting for Aaron Rodgers, there's one thing that I need to mention here, Alex. I saw a report today. This wasn't even planned to be discussed in today's episode, but now I have to bring it up because I saw it. According to Dan Graziano of ESPN, the New York Giants and the Pittsburgh Steelers are both begging Aaron Rodgers to sign there. We'll dive into that later in the episode, but what we really want to focus on in today's episode is the fact that the New York Giants are meeting and having a visit with Russell Wilson. Now, Russell Wilson scheduled 2 visits this week. One with the Cleveland Browns, which reportedly he's already completed today, and he still is planning on flying to New Jersey tonight to meet with the Giants tomorrow. There was some initial concern from me and a fear in my head, Alex, that he would go meet with the Cleveland Browns, and maybe the Cleveland Browns would give him a big sales pitch, and he wouldn't end up meeting with the Giants. Maybe he would get signed today. That's not going to be the case, according to the report. He's finished his meeting with the Browns, and he will be meeting with the New York Giants tomorrow. That's their plan B here in free agency. Now, I know a lot of fans love to throw out the obvious and say that this is technically a plan D move for the New York Giants because they went for Stafford, then they went for Rodgers, or plan C, whatever. I don't know. I think that this should have been the plan A's to go after Russell Wilson. I think they're comparable, him and Rodgers at this stage in their career, and in fact, I think that it's not worth the hassle. Sitting here and waiting around and letting all of the other free agents go that you might have been interested in. But again, we'll dive further into that as we get through this episode. But Alex, I do just want to get your initial reaction to Russell Wilson having a visit with the New York Giants tomorrow evening.
You know what? This is an opportunity for the Giants to make sure they get one of the top 2 free agent quarterbacks. Because the truth is that the longer we wait for Aaron Rodgers, the less likely I feel like he's going to choose the Giants. I mean, for all we know, he could retire and not play for anybody. Like, we saw the pictures of him walking around on the beach with, and for a player that is 41 years old and has $100 million in earnings, why does he have wired headphones? Like, a big question of mine. Should have at least AirPods. But listen, we saw the pictures. He's contemplating his future, looking out into the sunset, gazing into the unknown. I think as Pat McAfee said. And listen, this is a situation where the Giants, do they want to wait long enough for Rodgers to decide? He can take as long as he wants. It's Aaron Rodgers. We all expect this. I don't really care personally how long he takes. But the thing is, the longer he waits, the more likely it is that all the other quarterbacks come off the board. And if the Giants are willing to gamble their fate on Aaron Rodgers making a decision and him choosing the Giants, they deserve to miss out on all the rest of the quarterbacks. That's kind of how I view it at this point. So I think you tweeted it, Anthony. If they get Russell Wilson in that building tomorrow and he's like, I want to sign here, and they're willing to give him the money and the deal and whatever else it might be, they should sign him on the spot, because it's better to get Wilson than get none of them at all. And right now, I think most people believe that Rodgers will pick the Steelers. I don't want to run the risk of losing out on Rodgers because we're waiting for him, and then Russ signs with the Browns, the Titans, or a different team, and we're left with Joe Flacco or Jameis Winston or another, like kind of just stopgap option that's not going to even leave you competitive. So that's kind of how I feel at this point in time. Go and get Wilson if you can. Sign him ASAP. Don't run the risk of Rodgers taking forever to make this decision. And that way you can at least be competitive this year, and all these new big signings that you've made this offseason don't go to complete waste. Because if the Giants don't get a big upgrade at quarterback, it's going to be a complete waste. All the money they spent this offseason on guys like Holland and Adebo and everybody. So, and even their draft picks will go to waste for a season because they just won't have consistent quarterback play. So that's kind of how I feel about it right now.
I agree with that completely. And I know that there's going to be a lot of people that are going to respond immediately to what you just said. Well, if you need a big upgrade at quarterback and all of this is true, why even go ahead and sign one of these veterans? Why don't you just draft somebody? And there's going to be a lot of fans that feel that way. And the thing that I'll say to rebuttal against that, you cannot realistically expect a quarterback to step in and do what Jaden Daniels did or what CJ Stroud did. More realistically, if the Giants draft a quarterback with a top 3 pick here and they start him in week 1, you're more than likely getting a Bryce Young outcome because that is what you usually and typically get from a quarterback who's forced into the starting lineup immediately. A Caleb Williams, where, yeah, maybe they flash potential and they show you that they have the ability to be a good starter, but they're not able to do it consistently because they're a rookie. Rookies have growing pains. That's normal, and that's well known and well documented. There are so many prime examples of that. So for the New York Giants, as we've been saying all offseason long, Alex, it is crucial that they get a bridge quarterback. They get somebody in here who can win some games and maximize the talent on this roster because that's what the problem was last season. The Giants, they are far off. They don't have the most talented roster in the NFC East, but they do have some talent. They have some pieces. I would like to see Darius Slayton actually catch some 20-plus yard passes downfield. Wasn't possible this past season with Daniel Jones, Tommy DeVito, Drew Lock, and Tim Boyle throwing the football. Those opportunities were few and far between for him and the rest of the playmakers. And on top of that, the defense played worse because the defense was on the field so goddamn much because the offense couldn't get the ball into the end zone and sustain long drives. All of those things are related to poor quarterback play. What mitigates that? It's not throwing a rookie into the fire from week one. It's getting a veteran in here who can control possession of the ball and allow your other players to just play football and not overcompensate and worry about all that's going on around them. That's the quarterback's duty, and that's too great of a duty for one rookie to carry. That's why the Giants need to get a veteran. So I just wanted to rebuttal against certain fans who might be frustrated and say, why are we even doing this? Why are we even trying to get Rodgers? Why are we trying to get Russell Wilson? Just draft a rookie and start him. That's usually not good practice. Sometimes it works out. Sometimes it is good practice. But more often than not, those rookies need to wait. Look at all of the top quarterbacks in the NFL, Alex. Look at Lamar Jackson. Look at Josh Allen. Look at Patrick Mahomes. All these guys sat. There's only a few who didn't sit. Jalen Hurts sat for a bit. Most of the top quarterbacks in the NFL take one path. They get drafted. There's a bridge quarterback in front of them. Eventually, they take over when they're ready. I do not want to see the New York Giants throw a rookie into the fire. But unfortunately, the position that they're sitting in right now, waiting for Aaron Rodgers, they are playing a dangerous game. And they're putting themselves at risk of having to throw a rookie into the fire from week one. Which is why, in my opinion, and I wrote this article this morning, Alex, and it was an opinion piece, the New York Giants cannot let Russell Wilson leave that building tomorrow. I don't care if they have an answer or not from Aaron Rodgers. They can't run the risk of letting Russell Wilson walk out of that building. Aaron Rodgers then passes them over. And you know what? Now Russell Wilson changes his mind. I'm going to pass you over too, New York Giants. Then what are we stuck with? Jameis Winston, Joe Flacco, maybe Drew Lock and Tommy DeVito again? My God, I cannot handle that possibility. Or throwing a rookie into the fire from week one, bad practice. How you get what happened to Daniel Jones because he got thrown into the starting lineup in week 3, which I was grateful of because I was able to go to that game against Tampa and witness his first start of his career, and it was a doozy. However, it was way too soon. Eli Manning should have been in the starting lineup for way longer because the Giants exposed Daniel Jones to bad habits and exposed him to getting hit from a bad offensive line too early in his career. So you can look internally just at the New York Giants and take a look at how they ruined the development of their most recent rookie quarterback. And you can look around the league and find countless other examples. Bryce Young started playing better football down the stretch after being benched and being asked to just sit, wait, and grow for a little bit. There's nothing wrong with that. Nobody is a finished product in life. No human being is ever a finished product. You can't expect a rookie quarterback to step in and already be a finished product. What are we here for the entire pre-draft process prior to 2021, Alex? Trevor Lawrence, plug and play, day one, sure thing. You just throw him in the starting lineup and go. That man could have used some time on the bench. He could have used some time sitting behind a bridge quarterback for a little while. Trevor Lawrence learned a lot of bad habits in that first season in Jacksonville because they were such a mess. And that's why he hasn't become the success story that everybody expected him to be. So look around the NFL. Look at all the top quarterbacks who did sit for a while. And look at all the top quarterbacks who maybe didn't sit for a while. The ones who actually succeeded without sitting, few and far between. The ones who did not reach their full potential because they were asked to get into the starting lineup too soon. It's a laundry list. It's too long to count. And there's too many names to rattle off that I can't even think of right now. So that's my full take on that situation. And that's why, like I said, the Giants just can't put themselves at risk here. They cannot afford to miss out on one of these quarterbacks and just fail to maximize the talent on this roster again. They just spent so much money on their secondary. They spent a lot of money on the defense in particular. They brought back Darius Slayton and promised him that they had a plan at quarterback. Then they better have a goddamn plan at quarterback. And they better go ahead and sign one of these top 2 free agents. And if Aaron Rodgers sits here and he just keeps making the Giants wait, and all of a sudden it's Saturday and Russell Wilson says, I'm not waiting anymore, man. I'm signing with the Browns. Oh, and then Aaron Rodgers says, I'm going to Minnesota or I'm going to Pittsburgh, then the Giants are screwed out of luck. And I really don't want to watch that happen. I'll be unbelievably angry, and you'll probably hear one of my most impassioned and frustrated and violent rants that I've ever had on Fireside Giants. If that's the outcome of this offseason, the New York Giants better get a goddamn quarterback by tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, listen, this is a situation where I think we think of it as fans, and you and I want to draft a quarterback. We don't think Cam Ward is becoming even remotely realistic at this point, even so more unrealistic. Shedeur Sanders may be the only realistic option at 3. So let's play this game as a fan and as Joe Schoen, because these two things are vastly different, right? Joe Schoen just put a ton of money into this defense, really. Really, the offense is exactly the same until the draft, and if they sign some more pieces, we'll see how that goes. But he's reinforced the offensive line with some good depth. They brought Greg Van Roten back yesterday. I think that's a great move. I actually said that would be a great move the other day. However, not to start. I do not want Greg Van Roten starting. I want him being a good depth piece. He is a below average starter. He's getting older. He's 35 years old. I really don't want to run that back. I'd prefer to go get like a Tevin Jenkins or to go get somebody else. I mean, Kevin Zeitler signing for a 1-year $9 million deal is like, I feel like we could have done that, but Joe didn't do it. Maybe he wanted to go wherever, somewhere else. So it is what it is. But, looking at the situation at hand, I do think from Joe's perspective, he needs to be competent win now while ushering in this new quarterback, while drafting this new quarterback. So let's say like they go and get Sanders or Cam Ward, whatever, whoever it might be. They have to get Russell Wilson or Rodgers. There is no alternative, because Sanders, Ward, both those guys, you're depending on volatility of a rookie to save your jobs. I don't care what Sanders' completion percentage was in college, dude. Don't care. It is not going to translate to the NFL. It's not. He is going to struggle along with every other rookie for the most part. 99% of rookies struggle in the NFL. They get better as the season progresses, but I do think that if you're going to put all your chips on Sanders to save your ass, you are going to probably lose that battle. You're probably going to fail. I think that's why Rodgers and Russ are the best opportunity for them, because the truth is that, when you're looking at the situation, I think that going with the Jameis Winston, going with the Joe Flacco, it really is just like you're setting yourself up for failure. You're not going to be able to win enough games to convince John Mara to keep you around. So from Joe's perspective, he has to walk away in free agency with either Rodgers and Russ. I mean, if from what we're hearing, he's trying to press Rodgers. He's trying to get him to make a decision, but he has to get one of those two guys. It does not matter to me, because you can't wait around for Rodgers and his antics to let up. You got to just go sign Russell Wilson if that's the case. Make sure you get a guy that's going to keep you competitive, draft a quarterback, and prepare for the future. That is the best way the Giants, and Joe Schoen specifically, can situate himself to potentially save his ass. From our perspective, though, Anthony, I know we want to be competitive, obviously, but I'm thinking long-term, I don't really care who the bridge quarterback is if we're going to draft a quarterback, right? I'd rather, spend less on a bridge and then go get ourselves a really good guard, and that way you have a good situation where that rookie quarterback is going to assume that job with a really good offensive line that's already had chemistry building over the course of half the season. You know what I mean? Like, that's how I would preferably go in that direction, over giving Rodgers or Russ a multi-year deal, because it's possible that they want 1-2 year deals, maybe more than one. If that's the case, you're going to be paying them for a couple seasons. So, like, why draft a rookie quarterback if you're going to be paying them for 2 seasons? Because they're going to be heavily guaranteed contracts. So I'll ask you this, dude. Like, when it comes to multi-year deals with Rodgers and Russ, does that turn you off to the idea of drafting a quarterback? Does it make you a little bit more interested in going for like a Travis Hunter instead, or going BPA with Abdul Carter if he's there? Or do you think you still go after that quarterback and then just say, screw it, just let him sit for 2 years, and if one of those guys gets injured, he steps into a position where he can take over an offense that is already at least trending in the right direction?
Well, it certainly doesn't turn me off from drafting a quarterback, but it does add options to the table, which I think is crucial. You know me and you know my mindset. When you have the opportunity to draft a quarterback, you should take advantage of that opportunity. That's why I advocated for the Giants, unfortunately, passing over Malik Neighbors last offseason. I thought that even if Neighbors was there, and I thought he was the best player in the draft class, and that's why I was so thrilled when they drafted him, I still argued that because they were picking in the top 10 and they had an opportunity to draft a quarterback in a loaded quarterback class, they should take advantage of that opportunity. And so if they pick at number 3 and they take a quarterback, even if they've already signed Russell Wilson, I'm not going to fault them. I'm going to stick true to my word. They had an opportunity to take a quarterback, and that's what you do. That's what good franchises do. When you've got a chance to take a chance on a franchise guy, you go ahead and you take that chance. However, if they do sign a multi-year deal with a veteran free agent quarterback, you don't have to take the quarterback at 3. You still can, and I won't fault them if they do, especially considering Aaron Rodgers is 41 years old, will be 42 this season, and Russell Wilson is 36, will be 37 this season. I won't fault them if they take the quarterback, but now they no longer have to. They can continue to build and add talent on the roster. And then if they want, they could do what the Chiefs and the Bills have done, which is what I've referenced several times, which is what I thought the Giants were trying to do with Matthew Stafford. The Kansas City Chiefs, for example, traded many years ago to acquire Alex Smith. After acquiring Alex Smith, for 2 years, they threw a bunch of talent around him and they built a really good roster. And then they went to the playoffs. And then they traded up, sold the farm to move up in the draft and drafted Patrick Mahomes, gave it a year, moved off of Alex Smith, and made Mahomes their starting quarterback, and then ran off into the sunset, basically. The formula there is you get a quality bridge for a couple of years, you build around that bridge as much as you can to try and win as much as you can for a few years, and then when you have a really good team on your hands, a solid roster that could absolutely nurture a young rookie quarterback and make him better than he already is until he's ready to elevate the rest of the roster, that's how you do it. That's what the Chiefs did, and that's one avenue that the New York Giants could take. Now, there's many avenues, and I say this all the time. There's no one way to slice an apple, right? You could do it every which way, and that's what the New York Giants have in front of them. Options, if they sign one of these veteran quarterbacks. If they do not sign one of these veteran quarterbacks, so many of their options become eliminated, which is my big fear and which is why I'm being so adamant that they need to sign Russell Wilson tomorrow or get Aaron Rodgers to make up his mind and sign the paper today. So that's my take on that. But again, if we're going back to the draft and we're talking draft strategy, if you do sign Russell Wilson to a 2-year deal, surely you can go ahead and still draft Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders with a number 1 or number 3 pick if you're able to trade up or not. You can absolutely do that. And then you've got a rookie quarterback, a talented one at that, who could sit behind one of the game's best all-time great quarterbacks, learn a whole bunch, and then eventually take over next year or even 2 years from now if you want to Jordan Love the situation. Totally possible. Or you can keep adding talent around Aaron Rodgers / Russell Wilson, build this roster up, and then in the 2026 NFL Draft, maybe you are picking 15th or 17th or something. But you know what? So were the Chiefs. They were picking 17th. They moved up to 10 to take Patrick Mahomes. The Buffalo Bills were picking somewhere in the teens. They moved up inside, I think, to the number 7 overall pick to take Josh Allen. That's the formula that those teams utilize. You build up the roster, you sell the farm to get the quarterback the next year. If the Giants want to go that route, I could get behind that. Even though I am like the guy, the biggest proponent of taking the quarterback when you have the opportunity to. Do not pass over the opportunity to draft a quarterback. If the Giants do take a big swing here on a multi-year deal for one of these veterans, yes, I can absolutely get behind going the Chiefs strategy, the Bills strategy, building up the roster, then selling the farm the following year. The only issue that I see with that strategy, though, Alex, is that it's a long-sighted strategy, and this is a nearsighted team with a GM who's on the hot seat. This GM and head coach regime has to win games this year. That's why they want to sign one of these quarterbacks, but that also could be why they end up drafting an Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter at number 3 if that opportunity is afforded to them. So there are many different ways to slice an apple, like I said, but basically to round out my thoughts on your question, I just think it opens up opportunities for the Giants. It opens up a bunch of options. Now they don't have to do any sort of thing, but if they only sign Jameis Winston this offseason, yeah, now we have to draft a quarterback. If we sign Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers to a multi-year deal, we don't have to do anything, but we can do a whole lot of other things.
Yeah, I think it does push the needle further down. It pushes the can, kicks it down the road. You know, I mean, when it comes to actually getting a young quarterback, maybe you take one of the mid rounds you feel has developmental upside. Maybe you go and draft the Jalen Milroe in the mid rounds if he's even there, second, third round, whatever it might be. To give him a year or two to develop. Maybe that is something the Giants would consider doing. Or they could wait until next year in a stronger draft class and then trade up. Because if the Titans want a 2026 first round pick this year, you might as well say, all right, well, next year's draft class is already expected to be much better, and we're going to have to trade up to get a quarterback anyway. Maybe you just opt for that and just kick the can down the road, get a veteran quarterback, draft Travis Hunter, get another star or Abdul Carter, another star pass rusher. But I will say this, Anthony, Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, and now signing Golston does not I mean, I wouldn't rule out drafting Carter, but it doesn't lend itself to the idea of drafting Carter. So I get you could just just strengthen that position, but it does lend itself more to the idea of drafting Travis Hunter if you were to go BPA and if he was on the board.
Well, let me just counterpoint and say that re-signing Darius Slayton to a $12 million per year contract and signing up
Totally
Paulson
fair.
Adebo to a $15 or $17 million per year contract might say that the Giants don't have an interest in drafting Travis Hunter because they just
It's
address
totally
those two
fair.
positions.
Yeah,
So,
it's totally fair. And listen, if you're going to sign Slayton to that type of deal, it definitely does feel like he's starting, right? You can't push him out of a starting job already.
yeah. Yeah, but also, let me make this clear. I like that the Giants have addressed all of those positions that we just mentioned. And if they still draft a Carter or Hunter, I will be so happy because it will mean
Sure.
they did what, Alex? They went BPA, which is what I'm always begging. You add talent to a position and you don't just stop there and you don't just refuse to draft a player to that position because you already addressed it in free agency. No, you plug in all of your holes in free agency, then you draft BPA and you have these young guys waiting in the wings. That's why the Philadelphia Eagles just won a Super Bowl. Because even when they had Fletcher Cox and Brandon Graham and all these studs on the defensive line, they still took the best player available, which was Jalen Carter. They still took the best player available, which was Cooper DeJean last year, even though they had James Bradbury and Darius Slayton under contract. You just keep adding talent and you plug in all of your holes. You don't draft for need, which is what the New York Giants have been doing constantly for years. You stop doing that. You plug in these positions and you take the BPA, whether that's Carter, Hunter, or if they truly believe that's Shedeur Sanders, you take him as the best player available. Any of the three. Maybe they actually think, you know what, screw it. That Texas A&M pass rusher is the best player in the draft class. Take him at 3. Go BPA. Now that's not going to be the case. It's going to be Hunter or Carter, but that just lends myself to the argument that I've been making, Alex. So I think that was a really good question that you posed there. Yeah, they have situated the roster where maybe it doesn't make sense if you're drafting for need to take Carter or Hunter, depending on how you look at it. But that's exactly why I think they should take one of those two players. Go with the best player available. Just keep stacking talent on your roster. That's how you become a juggernaut.
Yeah, or a drug or not in your case. But I'll tell you what, I think that's kind of an interesting one for you guys in the comment section too. What are your thoughts about this perspective? Like the Giants have addressed pass rusher. They have their 3 guys. They have even a rotational piece now in Golston. They could always bring back Azeez Ojulari too. We don't even know just yet. I doubt it, but you never know. Slayton, bringing him back. You have Slayton, Wandale, Hyatt, and Neighbors. You don't necessarily need to draft a receiver like a Hunter or whatever it might be. Does that set the Giants up? Does that say they're going quarterback? They don't need a receiver. They don't need a defensive pass rusher, but you always love more, embarrassment of riches, basically. So, kind of an interesting question to pose. Do you think that everything they've done has steered them in a direction of quarterback, or do you think that they could just go BPA and, like you said, pull in Eagles and just get better at positions that maybe they consider a strong suit? I don't necessarily believe that their pass rush on the outside is like elite by any means. I think KT's good, not great. I think Burns is very, very good. He was played injured last year. Golston's solid rotational piece. At receiver, love Wandale, but he's tiny. Like obviously he's a receptions merchant in a way. Like he's not going to make a lot of big plays, but he could do a lot of stuff for you in short yardage concepts. And then Neighbors is your superstar, and then Hyatt's a great complementary piece. But I wouldn't label. Sorry, rather Slayton's a good complementary piece. Hyatt's still trying to find his footing if he ever does. I don't know. Do you view? I think you do. You view Slayton as like a upper tier WR2. Or do you think he's like a mid tier WR2?
No. I think he's an upper tier WR3. I think he's the best WR3 in football if you need him to be.
Okay, so that's kind of what I was curious to get your take on because I wasn't sure where you stood on that. I was thinking the same thing, like low tier WR2, high tier WR3, which is why like if they did go Hunter and you have him at receiver primarily, like you stick him at receiver, and you can use Hunter. And I mean, look, the truth of the matter is this. Neighbors and Hunter can move inside and out so much. You can put them in the slot, the Z, the X. You can put them all over the place. And Wandale's departure in free agency next year, which is probable, I would say at this point, becomes a lot less impactful. You can always draft like a LeJontay Wester if you want in the mid rounds to help at slot. Xavier Restrepo. You never know. Like those slot receivers are always they're a dime a dozen. You can find them really easily in the draft. Those smaller guys that can operate inside, or you can find them in free agency for pretty cheap costs anyway. So I do think that at least like a mid tier one, you're not going to find like a Amon-Ra St. Brown or like one of the top tier guys like that all the time. But I do think Hunter and Neighbors have that versatility that like you can use them so interchangeably and like really go inside and out with them. And you also have Theo Johnson, who's kind of able to be like a jumbo slot as well, because he's like a really good pass catcher. So you can use him in that role in a way. So, I think that Hunter makes a lot more sense than Carter in terms of like what the Giants kind of need. But if they were to get Rodgers or Russell Wilson, you're like 2-year deal. I totally get why they would go Hunter, because like you don't need a young quarterback at that point. Like you really just can go with that. Maybe you take a quarterback in the mid round, someone like a Slough. I forget how to say his last name. Slough.
Tyler Shock.
Shuck, yeah, whatever.
Yeah,
like
I want to jump in there though and say, if the Giants don't take a quarterback in the first round, they should take a quarterback at one of these picks in their 7 rounds. I was on Giants
even like a
Collective
Will
the other
Howard
day,
would be interesting.
Yeah, that became a pretty interesting debate. People were saying, oh, well, if you don't take a quarterback in the first, just don't take one at all. Did we not just learn our lesson last year? That's exactly what the Giants did. At some point last year, would we not have been happy if we had a late round quarterback on this roster who could at least give us some semblance of hope, some semblance of upside at the end of the NFL season? If the Giants don't take one at number 3 or 1, whatever, they don't take one in the first round, that should not mean that they don't take one at all. You have to throw darts at the board, like I always say. That's how 49ers end up with a guy like a Brock Purdy. That's how the Eagles end up with a guy like a Jalen Hurts, because they took a dart and they threw it at the board in the second round. Did they need a quarterback? No, because a lot of people at the time felt like Carson Wentz still was a franchise quarterback. Didn't matter. Still threw a dart at the board in the second round on a prospect who was good value. And boom, now they have a franchise quarterback in Jalen Hurts. So I totally disagree when people say if you're not going to draft one in the first round, don't draft one at all. Absolutely false. You have to draft a quarterback at some point in this draft, especially if you're rolling into 2025 with your starter being a 37 or 42-year-old.
Yeah, and I'll also throw in, you just got yourself an extra 3rd-round pick. So, while Anthony's dying of tuberculosis, we have an opportunity here to draft a quarterback in the mid-rounds, someone with some upside. It could even be a Ewers. It could be a Will Howard. It could be anyone.
Absolutely.
Just
Totally.
stash them and see what happens. They're going to be better than Tommy DeVito. Like, that's probable. So I do think that it's not a bad idea to get a guy that has some decent traits and then stash him behind a guy like Russell Rodgers and, see what happens. I almost prefer that over taking Sanders. That's my personal take. I'd rather take Travis Hunter over Sanders. I want Cam Ward, obviously, first and foremost, but I don't think he's going to be in a range unless we move up in this draft. I'm leaning towards if we get Rodgers or Russ and Cam is off the board and we're sticking and picking a 3, I'm going Travis Hunter if he's there. The question is he going to be there? Because you don't know what the Browns are going to do, right? Like we hear, they might go quarterback, they might not. They like Carter. They brought back Myles Garrett. Do they even need a guy like that anymore? Like now they have all these sorts of questions. And having a Hunter at receiver next to Jerry Jeudy sounds pretty nice for them if they get themselves a nice quarterback. So who knows what they're going to do? I guess that we'll have to find out on draft day. What the Giants and really what their options are. But if he's there, it's between Sanders and Hunter. I think I'm going to go Hunter in this case. If you do get Russ or Rodgers on a 1 or 2 year deal even, I think that would be something that I consider doing and then kicking the can down the road in terms of if you need to take a quarterback, a top guy next year, you can still, because you only spent a mid-round pick this year on a backup who had a year to, that gives you a little bit more flexibility in terms of your decision making.
That's what the Chiefs did. That's what the Bills did. That's what the Ravens did. That's what the Eagles did. There you go. You build up the roster, and then you trade up. You sell the farm, and you get your quarterback once you have a good roster. That's what a lot of them do. Now, me personally, since you gave what you would do in this scenario, you said that you would take Travis Hunter. Man, I'd have a really tough time not taking Travis Hunter, but I like Shedeur Sanders a lot more than you do, so there's a good chance I would end up taking him. Now, before I die here, because my cough syrup is not helping me at all, and I can't breathe, and I've been sick for a week, and it's really catching up with me right now, Alex, we're going to have the rare moment here where you're going to get to do the outro. Have fun, buddy.
Dude, this guy has the plague. It's actually crazy. But guys, thank you so much for tuning into Fireside Giants. Make sure to like and subscribe. As always, enjoy your flight. Enjoy the in-flight entertainment. And we'll catch you guys on the next Fireside Giants episode.